Welcome to the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. I'm Larry Wagner, and I've spent 30 years working with seniors where I was a certified senior advisor and the last 15 years in the home buying industry as a certified senior transition specialist, where I specialize in dealing with seniors going through a transition in their lives. This podcast is for seniors, those with seniors they love, and people who work in the senior community. In each episode, we bring on a guest who works to improve the lives of seniors. This podcast is your key to unlocking senior resources. Today I'm sitting with Adam Flattau from Senior Care Authority. Welcome, Adam. How are you?
Thank you for having me, Larry. I'm doing wonderfully, thanks.
Good. You and I know each other quite a while because of what you do for a living. You placed my in-laws into a independent living facility.
Correct. A few years back.
That's 3 years ago, actually. And that's what you do. How did you get to Senior Care Authority?
Probably the most common question I'm asked, actually, because it is a rather unique type of business. Corporate America for roughly 30 years. Started out in banking, specifically for commercial real estate, and then parlayed that into a successful 20-year career with a leading public company that provides commercial real estate information and advertising. Ran some rather large sales groups within that company. Towards the end of that part of my life with that company, unfortunately, I was thrust into a position of caring for some of my loved ones. Okay. Very common in this industry.
I was going to make that comment.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So over roughly a 5-year period, simultaneously, I was caring for my mom, my 2 twin uncles. Okay. One of which just passed away a few weeks back at 100 years old.
Wow.
No regrets. Just absolutely fantastic. And then I was also assisting in caring for my father-in-law. And like I said, that was all basically at the same time over a roughly 5-year period or so. And I knew absolutely nothing as to. Yeah. I mean, unless you've gone through something like this, caring for a senior loved one or any loved one, you are a neophyte to this.
Correct.
And I was such.
Yeah. It's complicated.
10 plus years ago.
Yeah.
And in helping them navigate the healthcare system and finding care and getting to appointments and just feeling better about themselves, I learned quite a bit. And I learned quite a bit about myself as well. So it wasn't just that I was able to solve some issues and solve some problems and get the right care in place for them, whatever it might be, whether it was at home or in a community or a facility. The one thing that I noticed every time that I was able to solve a specific issue, I saw on their faces a sense of relief, a smile, a relaxing of the shoulders, and that just made me feel great. And at that same time that I was kind of having a diversion of cultures with corporate America, right, where I wanted to maintain relationships and help people and do the right thing, corporate America was, chasing the almighty dollar. And there's nothing wrong with that. It was just not coinciding with my thoughts and beliefs at that time.
Yeah. You've changed.
Yeah. So I thought to myself, I'm pretty good at helping my family, at helping seniors, and I learned quite a bit. Perhaps there's a career in doing something similar to that, and spent some time investigating and looking into it over a year-plus period or so. And I came across Senior Care Authority, which is a franchise system. And I loved so many different facets of it and started my discovery and investigation process into it. And that was a little over 6 years ago when I purchased the Long Island territory for Senior Care Authority.
So that was going to be the next question. Thank you. Do you cover all Nassau and Suffolk County?
I do.
Wow.
So,
That's a big area.
I have different franchise opportunities amongst other franchisees throughout the country,
Right.
even one as close as Queens and the 5 boroughs.
Right.
But my specific territory covers Nassau and Suffolk County.
I know I deal with in these interviews in this podcast with a bunch of people with franchises of one sort or another dealing with seniors, but the territory is the North Shore by Great Neck or something very specific. All of Nassau and Suffolk County is incredible.
Yeah, it is quite a vast territory, and it does take 7 days, 24 hours a day, basically, to cover it all and make sure I'm doing the right thing for the families that I help and that I serve.
How many miles do you drive a year?
Too many.
I can't imagine. I hope I have a fuel-efficient car.
I won't go fuel efficient, but I do have a car that I love to drive. So that makes a big difference.
When you run it so much.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I had no idea you covered all of Nassau Suffolk. I knew you covered where we are. So that was fun. We're on the Nassau Suffolk border. Actually, we live in Nassau, and my in-laws are in Suffolk. My in-laws are in Nassau.
Right.
So you actually have both counties with us alone. Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. So no regrets in all these years. You're very happy with what you're doing.
No, I'd say if there were any regrets, it was that I came across Senior Care Authority not too late, but later in life. It would have been wonderful had I done this 10 years before I embarked on it.
It's funny, your progression to get here. I've gone through a similar thing. I'm in my third career as a real estate investor,
mm-hmm.
but I find myself dealing with senior citizens. Those are homes I typically buy from, which is one of the ways I got involved in your organization, because I met you through my in-laws, placing them. And then I joined your networking group that you're a board member of a GHNY.
Correct.
And which I said gerontological professionals of New York, but I've been saying it wrong all along. It's gerontology.
Gerontology professionals of New York.
Gerontology. I can't get that word out.
Yeah. Wonderful organization.
It's a wonderful organization. The people I've been interviewing have been from that organization. There's so many in the group. And you're a board member. It's one of the many things you do as an outside activity, if you will, from Senior Care Authority.
Correct.
You want to give a little bit about the organization or what you do there?
Sure.
And where else, what other organizations are involved with?
I'd be happy to shed some light on that. So, gerontology professionals in New York, more commonly known as GHNY.
Right. Easier to say.
It's been around for 20 plus years. Yes, I guess we can call it a networking group, but it's also a resource group and a group where its members can collaborate and share quite a bit of ideas to help each other's businesses and educate each other's businesses and individuals to foster both professional and personal growth. For the past few years, I have been on the board of directors of GHNY, along with some other wonderful, wonderful folks that I share the board with. My specific role within GHNY is the director of speakers and engagements. So where that comes into play is every month we have meetings. It's the responsibility of myself to make those meetings engaging and interacting. And many times I'll act as a moderator of a panel or bring some outside speakers in, but we try and make them as engaging as possible so people can get a lot of good out of those meetings.
Right. I think that I barely miss them. I host some of my organization. They're fantastic. As a matter of fact, this podcast is called Unlocking Senior Resources. And I got the idea, being a member of GHNY, because I refer people from your organization. We're just buying a house right now from a woman who's a hoarder. So we're bringing an organization guy who's going to come and go through all of her stuff, a member of yours, the organized guy, very appropriate name for his company. And he's going to go through her stuff and put into the pod so it gets moved to where she's going. And the rest of the stuff we'll take care of. And so, you're right, it's more than a networking group. It's a resource group.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be able to cross-refer everybody. That's what makes you valuable as you are and me as valuable as I am. That's not just buying houses, not just placing people. It's all the things that go along with it.
Oh, without question.
Yeah.
Part of my business as Senior Care Authority, which is primarily a senior living placement agency, that's the bulk of what I do, and it's quite frankly the revenue producing side of my business for the most part, even though I don't charge the families anything. I get compensated by all of the assisted living communities that I work with. But the other part of what I do through Senior Care Authority, and this is one of the things that attracted me to Senior Care Authority, was that I have a consulting business. So I am able to do what you were just saying, help people putting pieces together to make a plan actually work and come to fruition. And that largely involves knowing the resources within the industry that many people just, quite frankly, not aware of that even exists, and putting them in touch with my clients and my families to help the overall process run as smoothly as possible.
Without a doubt. I know previous to being a real estate investor, I was in the financial advisory world, and I dealt strictly with senior citizens. I didn't take them until they retired. My average client was 80 years old when I sold the practice 7 years ago. So I dealt with a lot of senior issues I had 880 clients at that time. So there's a lot of senior issues, and you have 880, I'll call them 80-year-olds.
Sure.
And I was always learning things as much as I did the same thing so many times, but every person is different. Their needs may be similar, but no two scenarios are exactly alike. And you're placing people, all the I guess, independent living, assisted and nursing home facilities on the island. I'm assuming you've toured them all, and you've selected the ones you think are the ones you like to refer out.
Well, what I like to refer to isn't as important as what really suits the individual and the family.
I'll rephrase my question then. There are some that you would not think are suitable for people, because I'm sure there are some that are much better than others. Are there ones you say I would never refer those or not?
Well, when you use the term better,
right,
it's very subjective.
Okay.
So better to me or better to you might not be better to Bruce.
That's interesting.
Okay. So are there some communities predicated on my tours and on certain aspects of the way that I've seen that assisted living community being run and operated that I choose not to do business with? Yes.
Okay.
That being said, there are still over 100 different assisted living communities on Long Island that I do business with.
Wow.
That I have individual contracts and arrangements with from a compensation standpoint, that I will, after interviewing and finding out what is important to the specific families, bring them to.
Right.
So, but again, saying what is better from my perspective,
that's fair,
doesn't really hit the nail, because it's important to say what's better from their perspective.
That's a very fair distinction. You said 100, you said nursing homes, assisted living, what did you say?
I said that there's over 100 assisted living, independent living, memory care communities on Long Island.
That was where I was going. It's all combined.
Yeah.
That are on your...
Yeah. Now, that does not include the 50-plus rehabs and skilled nursing facilities.
Right.
It does not include some of the smaller homes that are for residents or less that exist throughout Long Island.
Are there a number of those? Because first of all, they don't market, so they're hard to find.
Yeah.
You have to know they exist.
You do. And there are quite a few of them, but they're not governed by the Department of Health the same way that assisted or a defined assisted living community would be. So they're more under the rules and regulations of social services.
Right.
And yes, there are roughly 30 of them, at least 30 that I'm aware of, throughout Long Island, and they provide a service, but it's again very different than a more conventional assisted living community. And unless you know about them, you probably won't find them.
I'm in the business. I'm a partner at 3 nursing homes in Illinois, and we want the small ones, the residential assisted living, about 15 beds, not the under 5. And we want to bring that to Long Island. You can't do it because the state makes it impossible. Once you go under 5, it's a whole different set of rules. You can open them like this. 5 or more, it could take you a couple of years. If you want to open a 6-bed facility or a 600-bed facility, it's the same process.
Pretty much.
Which cost way too much money when you're opening a small facility, so they'll never open on Long Island. I had heard in California, I think it was 70% of all facilities have under 20 beds.
Yeah,
And you don't have that on Long Island.
correct. They're known as small board and care homes.
Oh, I heard of Raleigh's residential living facilities.
Okay.
Right,
Yeah,
same thing.
yeah. And they are extremely prevalent on the West Coast.
Yep.
And even as you
Right.
move east into Colorado and some other areas, and in some parts of the East Coast they are, but Long Island, New York, they're not one of the more prevalent.
Yeah, New York, it's literally impossible. I ran the numbers, we tried. It doesn't really work, unfortunately, here. And I really wanted to bring it here, but the state sort of, I'll say, doesn't allow it just through their regulations that make it impossible to do. But how often have you ever placed somebody in one of those 4 or under 5 bed facilities? Because I assume that's not something people request. They don't exist.
Well, you're right. They don't request it, but part of the process of when I'm meeting with families and talking with families is to find out what's important to them. And just because they don't know it exists doesn't mean that I won't bring it up if their answers to certain questions are leading me down that path where I say, you know what, perhaps we should look at one of the small homes with a maximum of 4 residents in them. So to answer your question, I've showed it to people. I have not placed anyone in that. Right. And that's just because it wasn't right for them at that time.
Right. I would actually open one of those up because the healthcare work that took care of my mother for 3 years was so wonderful. Mm-hmm. I want to set up for her.
Yeah.
As a thank you, I would have bought the property. She could have done her own thing, and just basically charged rent. So she could have made money and more money than she makes as an aide. Mm-hmm. And but she didn't want to do it. And I felt so sad. It would have been a wonderful thing for her, but it is what it is. I tried.
Yeah. Well, Larry, it's interesting. And she's probably a wonderful person and very caring and giving and a wonderful caregiver. But in these types of situations, it's not 9 to 5.
Oh, absolutely.
So for her or for anyone to say, this is something that I want to embark on, you have to know that this is going to be a 24/7 endeavor.
It is.
And that's not many people, most people are not cut out for that.
Right. I believe that. Mm-hmm. I don't know if she isn't or just didn't understand, but it was, I think being entrepreneurial was out of her comfort. Okay. So we tried to take care of all that for her, but it's what it is. We tried. Mm-hmm. So question for you. I want to first go back to the organizations we mentioned. Yeah. I have a bunch of questions for you after that. So you're a board member of GHNY. Are you involved in other organizations than that? That's how I know you.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm most proud about is my involvement with the Alzheimer's Association. It's an international organization, with being the single largest funder of research for Alzheimer's and dementia, only behind the Chinese and American governments.
Oh, wow.
There's chapters throughout all of America, and specifically near and dear to my heart is the Long Island chapter.
Why would that be, I wonder?
And within a few months of starting Senior Care Authority, which again now is a little over 6 years ago, excuse me, so within a few months I started getting involved with the Alzheimer's Association. At that point, it was more from a fundraising standpoint. The Alzheimer's Association puts together wonderful walks and events, and the longest day component, which is just a way for somebody outside of a orchestrated walk to come up with a good novel idea to help raise money for the Alzheimer's Association. So my involvement started there about 6 years ago, parlayed that into becoming the sponsorship chairperson for 2 of the 3 Long Island walks. Very, very rewarding, and helping raise, hundreds of thousands of dollars for the association.
Lots of people show for those walks.
Yeah. Each one of the walks is getting, over 1,000 individuals. And they serve a wonderful purpose, not only for raising money, but also for the caregivers and the people that are attending the walks. It's just an incredibly inspirational day for them to reflect on this journey of Alzheimer's that either they or their family members have gone through.
It's nice to know there's other people always.
Yeah. And it does give you a sense of community, a sense that I'm not going through this alone. And the support groups and the education that the Alzheimer's Association provides to anybody that is out there on Long Island and throughout the entire country are all free services that should be taken care of. And these walks and these events that we put together help with the awareness of what the Alzheimer's Association does. And then and I'm still sponsorship chairperson for multiple walks, but I was honored about 3-4 years ago to be nominated as a member of their board.
Oh, wow.
And I did that. And again, very rewarding. And then after a very short time, about a year of being on the board, I was nominated vice chair of the board, held that position for about 2 years. And then just recently, this past July, I was put in as the chairperson of the board. Wow. So I am now the chairperson of the board of advisors for the Long Island chapter of the Alzheimer's Association.
Very impressive. Very impressive. Where do you find the time? So you're doing that, GHNY, Senior Care Authority. Are you involved in any other organizations?
Yeah.
Really? I thought you were going to say no. I thought that was enough.
No.
That's facetiously.
Outside, of course, of some wonderful networking groups that I participate in.
Right.
There's also the Long Island Alzheimer's and Dementia Center, which is an adult day program, non-for-profit, located in Westbury. And they provide daycare for those impacted by any form of dementia, Alzheimer's or any other form of dementia. And aside from the program itself providing wonderful care for its constituents and participants, it also allows the caregivers to have a little respite when their loved ones are at the day center located in Westbury. They have the time, opportunity, and ability to do things that are important to them aside from caregiving. So that is a true need within the caregiving. I don't want to call it business, but it is.
I understand. And the respite care is so critical. I know my grandmother lived with us. She'd lived with us 6 months a year for 10 years with dementia. It wasn't called dementia then. They didn't know from the word.
Right.
And
senility and
they said a series of mini strokes. They didn't know what anyway, but yeah, senility was the key word. But and my mother, so my mother and her sister would take care of her 6 months back and forth. Yeah. But during that 6-month stint, it was grueling that you're watching her every moment, every day, and except when she's sleeping. And even then she'd get up and you have to still pay attention. So the idea of a respite care is so critical. You need that time to...
You do.
It's always the caretaker that's the one that burns out.
Yeah. Caregiver burnout is a real thing.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon for the caregivers to actually pass away before those that they are caring for.
Yeah.
Because of the stress, the anxiety, the lack of sleep, and the physical exertion that it puts upon those caregivers.
Absolutely. We're going through that now with our family, without a doubt. I see it. I'm seeing it right now. So question for you, I've got so many questions, but about the organizations.
Yeah.
I'll ask again. Are we done with the organizations?
There might be one or two I'm forgetting, but those.
Okay, we'll let them go. Okay. Yeah. So I know just from knowing you, you've actually been honored with some awards that are very impressive. I know you can't mention them, but I'm asking so you can mention them.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
There you go.
So within Senior Care Authority, when I first got started, I guess it was the second year that I was there with Senior Care Authority, I was awarded with the Franchisee of the Year within Senior Care Authority.
Second year.
Yeah.
How many franchises are there?
We're up to a little over 80 right now.
Okay.
So spread out throughout the country. I'm not on the corporate side as much as I possibly could be. So if my number's off a little bit with the 80, excuse me.
You got it.
But there was quite a bit of wonderful competition to get that award, and so that's something that I'm extremely proud of. And then as a result of my involvement with the Alzheimer's Association, with LIAD, with GHNY, And overall, with just caring for individuals, last year I was the recipient of an award given out by the Franchise Business Review, which is an international publication and monitoring service that covers all franchises.
Right, not just senior franchises.
No, specific to everything. I was the recipient of the Rock Star of the Year award in the category of giving back.
Wow.
So it wasn't just my success within Senior Care Authority. It was the overall philanthropic role that I play on Long Island, and that was taken into consideration, and I'm very, very happy and honored to be the recipient of that.
So this shows that this is a part of your DNA at this point. You went into this industry because it's where you got your fulfillment, and just running your franchise at Senior Care Authority would give you a level of fulfillment you weren't getting professionally before.
Correct.
But now you're taking it so much further, and that's the real test to show, even to you, how important this whole senior care is. It's especially on Long Island, where it's just such an aging population. Young people can't afford it, so a population keeps getting older and older.
It is.
You'll be in business a long time.
Yeah. I'm not overly concerned about the business aspect of things. So even though there are quite a few business ventures out there that do similar things to what I do at Senior Care Authority.
What makes you different than them?
Well, one of them, quite frankly, is my overall involvement with the community, within the community. My, involvement with Alzheimer's, with the Alzheimer's Association, with LIAD, with GHNY, all of these things that I do to not only help the families that I work with, but to help the other businesses and the other folks, in the senior industry. So that's definitely a differentiating factor that I think I'm, or that's rather unique to me and Senior Care Authority on Long Island. Other things that kind of separate me from the pack, so to speak, is I will meet with every single family that I work with. Okay. I try to do it in person. That's not always possible. So sometimes we spend hours on the phone going over what's important to that specific family. When we're talking about the best way for a family to find living and care solutions for their senior loved ones, we have to touch on many, many different things. It's not just geography. It's not just price. It's not just the care capabilities of various assisted living communities versus the care needs of the individual. It's personality of that person, and matching that with the personality of the appropriate assisted living community. Because each and every community, I don't care if it's run by the same brand name, but each and every individual assisted living community has a unique personality and different care capabilities.
I wouldn't have known that. I would have thought the big boys are the same as them.
No, and there are quite a few big boys out there. But each community itself differs from one another. They might have some underlying principles that are the same and philosophies the same, but it's important to know the executive directors of the communities, the sales directors, the care team, the tenure that these communities provide, as well as the overall resident makeup and the personality of those communities.
I was going to make a comment on that. If you have a Bristol and making up in Great Neck versus Bristol and Ronkonkoma, I don't know if there are Bristols in Great Neck and Ronkonkoma.
There are not.
That's
okay.
But I assume when in Ronkonkoma, it's a different resident base, and it may be more appropriate than a resident base in Great Neck. Because I'm assuming if you're in Great Neck, are they mainly drawing from that, for instance, that North Shore area? So
a community in Ronkonkoma might be very different than a community in Great Neck, but not necessarily just because one's in Ronkonkoma and one's in Great Neck. Yes, the majority of the residents in any specific assisted living community are coming within probably a 10 or 15 mile radius of that building. That doesn't mean that the geography of a specific town is all comprised of the same type of people.
Oh, that's true.
Okay. So, for example, in Great Neck, you're going to have a very, very, very diverse population that just live in Great Neck. So there are communities located in Great Neck that might be wonderful for somebody that even lives in Ronkonkoma.
Right.
Okay, and vice versa. So yes, we take geography into consideration, but it truly is more than that. It is understanding what's important to that individual. Do they like different types of foods? Are they a vibrant type of person, outgoing, more intellectual, or more introverted to the point where they just want to, sit back and read a book as far as spending their days. Right. And it's not up to me to decide what's appropriate for that individual.
Right.
But what is up to me is to find out what is appropriate for that individual. So again, what I do that I think differentiates myself from others is I spend a considerable amount of time with these families and the individuals to find out what is important to them, so we can make a placement in the appropriate assisted living community or memory care or independent living community last and bring joy and fulfillment to the individual and to the family.
Hi, I'm Larry.
And I'm Ben. We're the father and son team of Leave the Key Home Buyers, and we want to buy your house.
We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you were going through.
So if you're considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out and see how we can help.
Do you have an outdated home?
No need to update anything.
Have a home that needs repairs?
Don't bother with repairs.
Don't want to take everything with you?
Leave whatever you want behind.
Dreading the headaches that come with agents?
Sell your home without paying a commission.
Dreading prying neighbors attending open houses and passing judgment on your home?
No need for public showings.
When you sell to us, you'll have all the certainty of closing on your timeline, not someone else's, and there's absolutely no pressure.
Visit leavethekey.com or call us today for a no-obligation offer at 631-388-7771 if you want to sell your home today.
I'm going to speak on your behalf from experience. And you came here 3 years ago. You sat down with my wife and myself, but more important with my in-laws. And at the end of the meeting, you discussed with them all the questions that we wouldn't have thought about. But they were very, I don't say very personal questions, that's a negative word, questions about them. I'll rephrase it, to get to know them. And then you said, I'll come back. I'll get back to you with a selection of places that would be appropriate for you. You didn't have a pre-prescribed list of places that are close by in the next closest 10, 15 minutes away. We said we wanted to stay close. You gave us selections 10 or 15 minutes away, but you did that at our request. And even within 10 or 15 minutes, there's plenty. And you showed them 3. And out of the 3, one we weren't a giant fan of, but 2 were excellent choices. And the one they went to, they're thrilled. It was a wonderful selection. And what was interesting, not only were you wonderful with my in-laws, and they were when you left, they were because I'm the one who brought you to them. They were very, very happy. They felt you were the right fit to bring them to where they're going to go.
Thank you for that.
And you were very welcome. I'll thank them for that. And the last thing is, when you went on the tours with us, which didn't seem necessary to me, but it was necessary to you.
100% of the time.
And as much as the people someone from the facility would give the tour, but then you were sitting back and telling me quietly, also tell your parents, about this, and because you knew what their hot buttons were, where the person giving the tour didn't.
Correct.
And it was very funny the way you're doing it, not to undermine the person giving the tour, but to enhance. So, and it was very, very nicely done. And again, the results were excellent. And we couldn't have been happier. The process was fast. You did exactly what you said you were going to do. You did it not only politely, but with respect and with care and with a relationship. And I don't know if everybody works this way. I imagine everyone doesn't work this way. I imagine many do, but I'm sure many don't. And it's so difficult to give up your home and that level of independence. Even if you go into independent living, it's not independent living like living in your own home. And you made that transition for them much easier than it might have been otherwise. So for that, I thank you for me, and I thank you on their behalf.
Well, I was honored to help,
Yeah,
Larry.
yeah.
And thank you for the kind words. And it definitely makes me happy to hear that they were happy with their selection, because ultimately it is their selection.
Correct.
So yeah, and accompanying the families on the tours is very important to me, and something that I strive to do every single time. Now, of course, there are times when needs of families might overwhelm a calendar, so to speak, and I can't be in two places at the same time. But even in the very rare instances when I don't have the opportunity to accompany a family, I am spending a considerable amount of time with that family and conveying to the specific community that they're going to the things that are very important.
Right.
So they don't get overlooked or overshadowed. And, every community, as I said before, they're very different from a personality standpoint, but they're also very, very different from a care capability and licensure standpoint. And unless a family knows to ask about those things, it might not be volunteered as, from the community as to what they can and cannot do. Communities do not lie.
Right.
Okay. There's no reason for them to lie and mislead a potential resident. But when they don't know what's important to a family, or if they're not asked specific questions, they might not share certain things that could be very, very important to that family. And it's for that reason that I can never understand why a family would go out on their own to try and find the right community.
It doesn't cost anything to bring you on board.
Nothing at all.
You have a level of expertise we did not have. I dealt with seniors for a living, but I didn't do this. And there's no way I would have been able to do what you did and develop and when they went on the tours, they were a known entity when they walked in the door, right? Where if I suggest they go to whatever place, they walked in cold. But the tour was designed around them as a result.
Yeah, I mean, not only do my services save a considerable amount of time for the families, they're not spinning wheels looking at inappropriate communities, but it's also helping narrow down the right ones. Okay, we will go and look at 3 or 4 different communities with a family, as opposed to looking at 10 or 12 that people, when they go out on their own, might be looking at. And I can promise you that somebody that's looking at 10 or 12 different communities is wasting a considerable amount of time, because they're looking at communities that they might not even know it, but I can tell you would be inappropriate. Not only bad choices, but just inappropriate for those individuals.
Right. Oh, it was in hindsight, it was a no-brainer. And I would highly recommend. So I bring you on because I bring on people who I recommend. Many people I bring on the podcast I've worked with. And, but whether in your territory or not, because people listen to this everywhere, definitely bring on an expert. No matter what you're doing, bring on an expert. I don't fix my own car. I'm smart enough to fix my own car, but I have a mechanic who's an expert at that. The mechanic does not have a senior podcast, because it's not fixing my car.
That's right.
So we all do hopefully something we're good at. Hopefully I'm good at this. But putting that aside, you're good at what you do, and that's all that matters for today. So just a quick question, that is, what does the process look like? Somebody calls you. I'm sure it's not a lot of steps, so it's probably a quick process.
Well, it can be.
Right.
And it's important to know also that while the assisted living community and myself would love for the process to move as quickly as we want it to.
Right.
Okay. I make it a point with every family that I work with that they understand this needs to be done at their pace. Now, there are times where there are forced upon
Right.
time constrictions,
Health issues.
health issues, discharges from hospitals, rehabs, whatever it might be, that, make it where the timeline needs to be expedited, so to speak. Okay. But overall, the process can range from 2 weeks to 2 months. Okay.
Is that to select the place or to move?
To move.
Okay.
To move.
Okay.
Okay. I got an email earlier this morning from somebody that I started working with about 3 years ago. The time was not right for them.
Yep.
We had extensive conversations. We stayed in touch for 3 years. I got an email today saying, Dad is now ready to make this move. Can we start the process? So we never even looked at anything 3 years ago, but we spoke and discussed the various options, and they tried some things on their own with home care and some family members maybe coming in to help and assist, but it didn't prove to be as fruitful and beneficial for their dad as needed. So they're at the point right now where they're ready to do this. So I got that email today. I will get back to them, and I responded immediately, but I'll get back to them with time to set up an additional conversation to go over this discovery piece again, because 3 years is quite a bit of time.
Yep.
So we need to find out now what's important to that family. And we'll do that probably later this evening or tomorrow. And from that point on, we can start seeing assisted living communities, assuming, of course, calendars mesh and everything, later this week. Once we see them, we can make a decision relatively quickly. I'll help them negotiate the best possible rate structure. And I'm not suggesting that there's always flexibility or room for negotiation, but many times there is. And that's usually predicated on the community's overall census and whether or not they're running any promotions or incentives at any specific time. But I'll do my best to sift through that and get them the best pricing. But we can get to a decision inside of a week. Then there's some medical paperwork. There's some assessments and evaluations that the community needs to perform with the individuals.
Is that on all levels from independent to nursing, or is it just
assisted living, which encompasses memory care as well. And to some extent, independent living, although not as defined by the state. All assisted living and memory care does require specific medical paperwork as well as assessments and evaluations by the community. Independent living, as it is defined, is not governed by the Department of Health and has really no real regulations and no need for an assessment or evaluation. That doesn't mean that they don't do something a little bit informal.
To make sure that you're a good fit for them.
Exactly.
So I didn't realize the process could be that quickly. What is the longest part of the process? I think I know what the answer is. I'm curious if I'm correct.
That all depends upon the individual family.
I'm sure.
Okay. Many times the longest part of the process is talking with the individuals and having everybody get up to be on the same page as to what is assisted living. If I was to ask somebody the question, ask a whole bunch of 50 or 60-year-olds who I call the adult children. If I was to ask them a question, hey, do you remember when you were growing up and you were going with your mom or your dad into assisted living communities to visit a loved one? And many of them will raise their hand. Yes. They're wrong. And I say that because assisted living didn't exist. So what they were doing is that they were going to see nursing homes. And that's a very, very different venture, okay? Nursing homes are a medical model, and assisted living is a social model, and the differences are extremely obvious once you know the differences. But the point I'm making is, if those people that I just asked thought that they were going to see assisted living, just imagine what their parents, the 80s, 90-year-old individuals, what their perception is. So they're thinking that the nursing home that they saw 30, 40 years ago is what they're going to be contemplating, is that right for them right now? That's not the case.
Right. But 8 years ago, I had gotten my parents into a place actually in Melville, and it took me 6 months to convince my brother and sister, who don't live locally, and I live a few minutes away,
Mm-hmm.
that they need to go, that should not be living alone anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so after 6 months, they came on board, but while they weren't on board, I was still trying to convince my parents. And then once they came on board, it took another 6 months. So it was literally an entire year of trying to get my parents to do it. And my mother's big objection is, when I showed her the place that they ended up moving, it's so far away. Because they went from the Nassau to Suffolk,
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes. And I was 10 minutes away. I wasn't far away.
Mm-hmm.
And the new place was going to be 10 minutes from me, too. It was like a equilateral triangle.
Sure.
And I got them in the car. I drove them. And she goes, why are we here? I said, well, she goes, we're here already? I said, yes. She walked in. The place was beautiful. There were people walking around. There's a piano playing in the lobby. And so, it was such a nice place that your friends are gone. Their friends have either moved away or passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a whole new cache of friends waiting to be met. And I find the hard part is, as you say, getting the family on board.
It is.
And the second thing is getting your folks or the folks who are moving to go through the stuff and decide what to take, because they've got to scale back. And that's probably a very difficult part too.
It is. Moving
Yes.
at any stage of life
Yes.
is one of the most stressful
Yep.
and least favorable things for anybody to do.
Yeah.
But when you've accumulated your belongings over a 50, 60, 70-year lifespan, yes, you might know what you use every day and
Right.
what's near and dear to your heart. But when you look at the vastness of everything that needs to be figured out,
Yep.
it can become overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And it's a good thing that through GPNY,
Yes.
through a number of these other
Yes.
networking groups, we've come to know quite a bit, or quite a few companies and services that help with that.
Right.
Downsize and
Right.
move managers and organized individuals that really can help smooth out that process.
Without a doubt. But remember, go to the experts.
Go to the experts.
You're not an expert at cleaning out someone's house, right? You're an expert at finding a place to go.
That's correct.
Same thing. So I say that all the time. So we know to look for somebody like you. We know there are plenty of places to go on Long Island alone. We learned a lot, and we learned the process and so on. If there's one takeaway in this discussion, what would you like people to glean from this conversation?
One takeaway. Many people feel that this is something that they can do on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And many people are successful. But I would also say that an equal amount of people that have done this on their own, that have been successful, have also made errors. To utilize a service like mine, like Senior Care Authority, that is intimately familiar with all of the assisted living communities, the cost structure, the care capabilities, the personality, and knowing that at the end of the day, I can even help save the families some money.
Right.
For families to try and do this on their own just doesn't make sense to me. Okay. I do save families a lot of heartache, a lot of stress, and many times a lot of money.
And as an outsider and an objective participant in the process, I'm sure you are able to put a lot of disagreements to bed, solve a lot of issues that sometimes go into that. It's like, I would say, it's like telling your 5-year-old go brush his teeth. Doesn't want to brush his teeth. He goes to school. Teacher says brush your teeth. Suddenly he wants to brush his teeth.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that, as an independent party, you come with authority, to use the company's name, that the siblings don't have with each other.
Well, without question, and it's not just the siblings. It's the moms and dads.
Yeah.
listening to your sister or brother, or listening to your mother or father or your child,
Right.
is a very different type of arrangement than listening to a third party independent professional.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I hear that quite often, Larry. Yeah. It's great that you were here, Adam, because I've been telling Mom that for 2 years, but she doesn't listen. But thank you. She listened to you.
That's exactly what I would expect.
Mhm.
So with that said, how do people get hold of you?
Well, I wish it was easier for people to know that I existed,
Right.
because that's a big issue. But the best way to get a hold of me, my Senior Care Authority website is seniorcare-longisland.com.
Well, that doesn't help. Okay, so seniorcare-longisland.com.
Correct.
Okay.
And my email is adam
Mhm.
at seniorcareauthority.com.
Okay.
And the best way to reach me is to call or text me on my cell. That's the only number that I hand out on a readily available basis, and that's 516-695-5159.
Perfect. So they've got your email, your website, and your phone. Can't make it easier than that. So if you need to reach out and need care, I highly recommend this is the man, and definitely give him a holler. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Larry. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. If you've enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast. We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you are going through. So if you are considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out to see how we can help. When working with us, you can sell your home in its current condition, there is no need to remove unwanted items, and you control when the house is sold, along with so many other advantages. Visit leavethekey.com or call us at 631-388-7771 to learn more about our senior home buying process.